Today I'm going to be talking about my research paper. For my research paper, I chose the topic of the effects of divorce on children. Now, when a divorce happens, the most common thing people think about being affected is the parents, because obviously they're the ones that are getting divorced. But one thing that people don't typically think about is the children and how they are negatively affected from a divorce. Now, these effects can be avoided, but the proper precautions must be taken in order to avoid these problems. In a society where 50% of marriages end in divorce, this is something that's very common and it affects thousands and thousands of children. Now, during divorce, the most common thing for children that is negative is that the children are overlooked. During a divorce, the parents are dealing with a lot of things, with the divorce, and their time is taken up, and their children are overlooked. They don't pay as much attention to them, and this has a very negative effect on children. Following a divorce, these children are typically they become they have more negative behaviors. They are less likely to be successful in the classroom. Uh, Following a divorce, children's academic success is almost guaranteed to decline. This is because following divorce, children are less likely to go to school because if their parents aren't paying as much attention to them, they know that they can get away with doing things that normally they couldn't, so they're going to try and skip school. A study showed that students that do not have divorced parents have an 8.3% higher attendance rate than students that do not have divorced parents, which just shows that children of divorce are more likely to not attend school. Now, when a student isn't in school, they're not there to learn. So when you miss school, you have to almost teach yourself. I mean, some teachers are willing to help you and they are willing to go out of their way to teach you things after school or during free time, but some teachers aren't. So students that miss a lot of class are forced to almost teach themselves. Also, the same study showed that children that have been through divorce only have an average grade point average of 2.88, which is lower than students who have parents that are still married, which have an average grade point average of 3.4088. This is a significant decline, and this can be also tied right directly to the students not going to school. In addition to academic success, children from divorced families often they develop behavioral problems. These behavioral problems are directly tied to the things that the children see and that they're around during a divorce, such as, their parents are stressed, they're very distracted, they're not paying as much attention to them. And when this happens, children are often more likely to act out, to try to get their parents' attention, to try to get them to pay attention to them. And this causes the child to act negatively because when they're trying to get attention, they know if they do things that they're not supposed to do, they know that their parents will pay attention to them. Also, children are a direct product of their environment, so during a divorce, often parents will be fighting or yelling, and this has a direct effect on them because when they see these things happening, it's a learned behavior, so they begin to do the same things as their parents. So they'll become, more aggressive, maybe using foul language. Another thing that directly ties to divorce that affects children is the decline in the relationships and contact with the parents. Uh, it's very common during a divorce that you have a loyalty conflict where, are you going to be more loyal to your mom or more loyal to your father? Because obviously during a divorce, parents, not intentionally, but they will play the other parent against the child and almost force the child to choose which parent that they're going to listen to or do the things that they want them to do when there's conflict between the two parents' ideals or what they want the child to do. Now, some studies show that fathers are less likely to be willing to invest in their children following divorce. which I don't think is completely true. But the study that I used does say that, and it had very good evidence, which kind of swayed my opinion a little bit. Now, these effects on children, they're not short term. These things can affect children for the rest of their lives. And oftentimes, some of these things will even get worse as a child gets older. Because when, for example, like the relationship, if a child's relationship is declining at a young age, obviously, as they get older, their relationship with their parent or both parents, if it's declining at a young age, is just going to get worse. Another problem Another thing that creates a problem during a divorce is a lot of times one parent or maybe both parents will get remarried. And one thing that comes along with remarrying is often step siblings for the child that's been divorced. And during during this remarriage, it's a process, of figuring out whether they're going to be accepting of their stepchildren or their step siblings, or whether they're going to be resentful towards them, which each child will react differently. But one thing that causes a lot of problems is that the parent that's remarried now has to put their time and their money into other children, which creates a problem because now you have little to or less things being given to that child, and more things are given to someone else, another child that isn't their direct sibling, which causes a lot of problems for children of divorce. Another thing that creates a problem is following a divorce. There's always typically there's one parent that caused a divorce, whether it's an affair or something of that nature. So that child is typically going to blame, why the divorce and things changing on that parent, which is going to also create resent towards that parent. Now, these negative effects, they can be controlled, they can be limited, but it's all on the parents. Parents need to take care in handling their divorce around their children. The children should be left out. There shouldn't be any, fighting between parents about the child or about anything in their divorce. It's extremely important that a child is never put in the middle of the divorce where they're swayed to pick one side or the other, or just show their loyalty to one parent or the other, because at the end of the day, you still have a mom, you still have a dad, no matter what. You're still equal parents. And you can't have partial parenting where one parent is doing more parenting than the other. The parents need to co-parent together, even if things are terrible in their divorce and they hate each other. It's extremely important for them to co-parent, because if they don't co-parent, there's just going to be all these problems are just amplified. A divorce, I mean, this is a very common problem in today's society, I would say, because so many people get divorced and there's so many children that are put into these situations. But I think that with proper parenting, that these things can be definitely be avoided, and you just have to take into like consideration the children's feelings. For example, if a parent is getting out into the world again, where into dating, you have to take into consideration the way the child might feel about your dad is dating again, which that can be a shock to children. So they just need to take it in consideration, their children all the time, their actions, their everything, the way that they talk to each other, the way everything in a divorce is handled is very crucial, because the children just need to be left out of all the problems, and it shouldn't be brought onto them. In conclusion, I just want to say that I chose this topic because my parents are actually getting divorced right now. So most of these things are things that I've been dealing with lately. So it was something that was easy for me to relate to, because I can see these problems occurring in my own situation, where both my parents try to play each other against them, and it just leads to problems. So I just can't emphasize enough that if anyone's to read this and to be a parent someday and you go through a divorce, you just need to keep in mind that everything is about your children, and these things can be avoided.